that was a tough one. That was a not a tough one in that it was bad or it was even incredibly heavy, but just in the fact that it was deceptively beautiful, and beauty out of ugliness. There was just a lot going on with this movie, and I can see why the critics are just hailing it left, right, and center. You gotta wonder if all these critic awards are going to translate into Oscar. We're getting into Oscar bait territory now. This time of year, everyone's trying to get those big Oscar contenders out, and I wonder if all of the critical acclaim is actually going to translate into Oscar gold. I don't know how that works anymore, and I don't generally care, given how the Oscars work any longer. But I gotta say, when a film wins a lot of these independent film awards, it always kind of puts me on my guard a little bit, because I don't trust those. Not in that they don't have good taste. It's just I find the films that are usually up for those a wee bit slow and a wee bit pretentious. Sometimes pretension can be a good thing, but other times it's just, I don't know if the films are really as smart as they seem to think they are. And this film, I think, truly is as smart as it thinks it is. Make no mistake, it thinks it's smart. It is not a simple point and click adventure, like a lot of these. I remember Manchester by the Sea, that god awful piece of shite that got all that critical acclaim and was just a terrible film, and just a lot of let's go out and shoot the lovely scenery for a while, a lot of that bullshit. That film thought it was clever. This film knows it's clever. And you see it in just every fucking shot of the movie. It's incredibly, much like Last Night in Soho. This is another film that would be very interesting to rewatch and pick up on all the little things that you're not picking up on at first glance. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie. And what's funny about it is that it is so simple. There's just not there's not a lot of heavy thinking in terms of subject matter that's going on, but in terms of the subtext, in terms of everything going on the surface, there is just so much happening. All right, but I'm getting off on tangents. We haven't even discussed the plot yet. Let's talk about this. So, the story is you have a young man by the name of Buddy, about 9 years old, I believe, 9 to 10, growing up in Belfast, Ireland. Around 1969 is when the title card said. Living in a small street in Belfast when, of course, this is when they were starting to have all the religious riots, the Catholics versus the Protestants, and things were getting really hairy. And it's this young man just kind of, it's not even what I would call a coming of age story, because it's not about him growing up. It's not about, him, leaving childish things behind and becoming a man like so many, coming of age stories are. It's more just about him living his life during an incredibly turbulent and difficult time. And the film alternates between him dealing with heavy shit and incredible violence and confusing things that a child just shouldn't have to wrap their head around in the first place, but nonetheless has to, because it's happening right outside his bloody door, and it alternates between that and the simple little things of, getting wonderful Christmas presents and liking a girl in school and trying to get good marks, and, all these little things. What it got me thinking about a lot is I sometimes wonder about the people, they'd be in their 20s now, but the people who were, wee children about this young lad's age back when 9/11 happened, and what that must have felt like to them, not just in terms of the confusion and the fear that, must have been gripping them because it was gripping everybody, but in it, growing up in the world that came out of it. Those of us who are adults, you know, we saw the world changing, but for a wee person, that's the perception of the universe has got to be very skewed because of situations like that. Likewise, now we got a generation of kids who are going to be growing up in an era after, you know, horrid race riots and the fucking morons storming the Capitol. And what is that going to do to them? You know, as they watch the world kind of suffer from the fallout of such a thing. So yeah, it's a really interesting take on it. What I find interesting about this is everything about this movie is from our young protagonist's point of view. Every little thing. And now that's not unique in and of itself, but it is incredibly obvious how much it is from his point of view. We're not given a lot of details on the story or on the inner workings of the political issues. I remember feeling rather lost for the first couple minutes because I know very little about this. I've read stuff, and of course I've taken history courses, and I know the basics, but obviously having not been there at the time and not being from Ireland, though I am, you know, part Irish, I understand it to, you know, in a theoretical level, but not in a deeper level. So I felt like I was very, very lost in the early goings of this movie because it just starts right out. But then I came to realize it's because we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to understand exactly what is happening. We're not supposed to understand what our main character's father his involvement is. It's very unclear as to what his involvement in the story is, but you know he is involved in some way, shape, or form because our protagonist doesn't know it. It's all coming from little snippets of conversations he's overheard or little bits of information he's picking up as he goes. You know, it reminds me a little bit of the Harry Potter series, bizarrely enough, in that the Harry Potter series is written strictly from Harry's perspective. And so for great deals of the books, you don't know the full story because it's only what he's able to overhear or putting pieces together that happen, you know, months apart and whatnot. The difference here is that this one, they don't feel the need to have anybody give you a big monologue and explain everything to you at the end to wrap everything up. They just kind of let it go with the fact that this young man doesn't know what all is befalling him, and just that his world is changing. And not, again, not in the coming of age thing, oh, I've suddenly noticed girls. It's in the sense that the place you grew up and the world that you knew is not the same any longer. It's not as happy, it's not as safe, or perhaps it's the realization that it never was in the first place. I don't know. I think that's left open to interpretation, but that's something I really loved about this movie, is that it was all just from this wee boy's point of view. Everything, including a lot of the camera angles. The camera does a lot of, there's a lot of beautiful framing in this. Kenneth Branagh, of course, is a theater person. You know, a great theatrical actor, and you really see that in his directing. He directs very theatrically. Meaning that the tableaus and the staged pictures are very important to him, and you can see that with the placement of the camera in this film. Is that he's very, very careful where he places it. There's not a lot of fancy camera movement. There's not a lot of you know, long tracking shots or anything like that. A lot of the scenes are just the camera in place and the scene playing out, with minor cuts here and there. So he's very careful to stage his pictures, and always, again, from our wee lad's point of view. So things are a little lower in some shots. Sometimes things are a little higher when he's looking down on them, or he's looking up at, very Citizen Kane. You're looking up at more powerful characters, and they're looking down on you. Kind of that philosophy. And there's every shot is staged in that manner, that you're always kind of looking at it from his perspective. There are only a few times I don't believe that is the case, and that is in the very, very few scenes for which he is not present for. There is a really wonderful scene between his two grandparents that is just them having a conversation before his grandfather goes into the hospital. And I kept expecting him to kind of pop up, because that's how they did a lot of these scenes, is that they'd have the scene play out or get about 3/4 of the way through, and then you'd see Buddy, kind of his head pop up, or the camera would tilt slightly, and you'd see him off to the side listening in. And it didn't do that in this one. That's one of the only times when the camera is kind of straight on and not at, kind of a look, taking it from a low angle or a high angle. Also love the black and white shooting of this, and the contrast between the black and white and where he decides to put color. The only time we see color in this is in the bookends, right at the front and the back of the film. And also anytime Buddy and his family go to the movies or to the theater. Those are all in vivid color, and that would make sense, because again, to a young man, in the movie theater or at the theater itself, those images are burned into your psyche, your memories. I think about it now when I go and I've seen Jurassic Park in the theater, or Transformers the movie in the theater, and it does seem like the colors are brighter, so I just love the filmmaking of this movie. It's beautiful, and as I said, it's such complex simplicity. It's a complex story told in a very, very simple way, but even within that simplicity, there is so much going on in the inner workings. I haven't talked a lot about the acting, but the acting's top-notch. The cast is phenomenal all the way around. Of course, young Buddy, a young actor, does a tremendous job. And what I like is, again, because it's trying to be as honest as it can be, there's not a lot of things. Like, if you take another look at a film like Jojo Rabbit, great movie, but Jojo had a little bit of heightened sensitivity because the film was a comedy. It was a dark comedy, so therefore everything was turned up a little bit. Jojo did not behave often as a child specifically would. There was still a bit of the adult in him because of the heightened sensitivity to the world around him. You have to have that for the comedy. Here, Buddy does not have that. He is a child. He is a child straight up, and he reacts and processes things as a child. And some of there are some tremendously funny lines in here, and it's just him being a kid. They're not like wonderfully precocious lines like you'd hear on a terrible 80s sitcom, where these kids deliver these ootsy-cootsy lines, completely devoid of reality. It's a natural, straight, very good delivery of the lines, and he's up there with some grand actors. Dame Judi Dench playing his Grammy, and do I need to say that Dame Judi Dench is phenomenal? Do I need to tell you that? I don't think I do. If I have to, then you have not seen much, I'm sad to say. Probably the most touching performance is that of his grandfather, and I'm afraid I do not know the actor's name. But he's one of those actors you've seen everything. I know he played Mace Rider in Game of Thrones. I know that's terrible. You always equate all the European actors by who they played in Game of Thrones, but there you have it. But he was grand. He was phenomenal. I think if anybody in this film deserves possible Oscar nomination, Best Supporting Actor, I think it's him. He gives a really touching and beautiful performance, and really shows the love. And he and Judi Dench have some really great scenes together. They play off each other really well. The gentleman playing his da is really playing Buddy's da is really good too. Of course, I didn't realize this was the same guy who played fucking Christian Grey in those god awful 50 Shades movies. But there you are. There you are. Just proof. You know, don't judge a person by one shitty film, or 3 shitty films in this instance. I did not get to check to see who played his mother, but she did an excellent job. Though the one place I think this film falls down, and I'm curious now. I don't know how much of this might be semi-autobiographical for Mr. Branagh. I'm not sure. I get the feeling that it might be, but I don't know enough about his history to say that for sure. And if that is true, and he is based off his parents, I can understand that. If it's not, if it's a fictionalized story, then I feel like the one place the script falls down a little bit is it tends to fall back on some not so much unpleasant stereotypes, but unflattering ones. So all this trouble is going on. You know, they're setting up barricades at the end of your street. There are, you know, gangs being formed, and you got 2 weak kids. You got a weak kid and a teenager who's getting suckered into the gangs because you can't not, because if you don't, they'll beat the shit out of you. And the mother's whole reason for wanting to stay is, no, this is my home. I don't know anywhere other than this. Well, I can understand that, but I can also understand the fact that I don't want my kids getting killed by gangs or fucking rioters. You know, and if you have, and they're given a golden opportunity to leave, and the biggest kind of question of the film is, are they going to leave Belfast? And they're given an out, and she's still very kind of, no, I don't want to go. This is me home. You know, that's not her accent. It's not even my accent. And yet she still doesn't budge, and it's like, I admire your strength, and I understand what you're saying, that, you know, yes, everybody knows you here, and you know everybody, but right now the people you know are trying to fucking kill you. It's like, this isn't going to get better. You need to get out for a while. So, I feel like if this was based on a true story, if this is based on personal recollections, trying to enunciate when you're trying to do an accent at the same time, not an easy thing. Anyway, if it is based on real recollections, then I understand why he's playing it off the way. If it is not, then I feel the conflict that is engineered feels very pat, if that makes sense. Again, I want to be clear, this is a very, 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 very minor issue with this movie. On the whole, and I do not say this often, but I think this movie is really deserving of all the praise it's getting, because it's gorgeous. It's beautiful, it's uplifting, it's heartbreaking, it's all those things that critics just love. And I almost feel like I'm betraying myself by going, yay, I love it as well, but it's a damn good film. Yeah, if the most you can kind of pick at is that it's a little cliche in one minor part, that is not a bad it's not a bad track record. The only other thing I can think of to say is that, once again, I'd love to go to a movie where I didn't see someone on the toilet. But, you know, there you have it. So, I hope you haven't mind listening to me doing a bad Irish accent this whole time, but you really can't help it after you see this movie. You just hear it so much, you come out talking Irish. And not even a good fucking Irish accent. I'm sure most people from Ireland will hear the way I talk and go, what the fuck are you playing at, brother? But, you know, anyway. But let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up now, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. So let's do final grade for Belfast. I gotta go a solid A on it. I can't give it any less. I'm not quite sure what's keeping it from being the A+. I guess for me, what's keeping it from that A+ is, while I kind of want to watch this movie again for cinematic study and criticism study. I don't know if I really want to watch it again just to watch it again. I don't know if it's one of those movies that I'll come home after a hard day and go, ugh, I think I'll throw Belfast in. But at the same time, I don't know. Same time, I don't know. So, but it's a good picture. It's a good, solid picture and bizarrely uplifting in its way. So I recommend it. I say go check it out. So that is my review of Belfast. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for listening to me daft accent all night as I've gone through this. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.